Hey everyone, Jenna Mike here, and I'm back with another video. Today I'm going over the new film Black Phone 2. This is the sequel to the original film Black Phone, which came out in 2021. The film goes as follows. Bad dreams haunt 15-year-old Gwen as she receives calls from the Black Phone and seeing disturbing visions of three boys being stalked at winter camp. Accompanied by her brother, Finn, they head to camp to solve the mystery, only to confront the grabber, a killer who's grown even stronger and more powerful after death. Now, as someone who's seen the first film, I was really pleasantly surprised with this concept of the grabber and this new serial killer, but also the concept of you answering a black phone and you hearing the souls of his victims, and basically kind of seeing how his sins are literally have not left them, even as he's continually going on this killing spree and everything. And the black phone is having this escape way for these souls to actually help the person who's currently captive and help them escape. I thought it was a very interesting concept there, and left a lot of room to explore. However, with the end of the first film, Ethan Hawke's character, the grabber, dies. But as we all know, that with the first film is that death is only a destination, and we see the return of the grabber in a new light with Gwen and Finney going into this winter camp, and Gwen, who has the abilities to foresee the future and everything, or have some type of connection wherever to finding these souls and everything, but also Finney, who's able to connect with these souls through the black phone and calling them and everything. This is a way where we see these characters evolve into a new version of themselves now with childhood trauma, right? Especially Finney's character, who's also older and much more jaded and evolved, I should say, more aggressive, but he's also protective of his sister, rightfully so, because of what happened to him, right? You think that being abducted and in that situation and everything, what lingering effects does that have on a child's mind now who is a teenager, right? And you see that beautifully displayed here in this film. Now let's talk about terms of the plot of this film. Does this film deliver in terms of having an interesting story and follow-up to Black Phone 2? No. However, if you are here just for the horror film genre and just going for popcorn fun, then you probably will have a good entertaining time. Honestly, watching this film, it feels like, unlike the first one was more original in terms of concept of the black phone, this one literally turned into, all right, let's go to start off with Black Phone, and let's turn this movie into Freddy Krueger Dream Warrior. And that's the best way I can describe this movie if you've seen it. Fred is basically become the new rebooted Freddy Krueger in this world, in the horror genre and everything. And that really bothered me in terms of being original in terms of within horror. And I felt that even though Ethan Hawke and Madeleine, McGraw and Mason Thames have fantastic performances in this film, I felt that the concept of that being almost a ripoff of Freddy Krueger at this point really kind of just left me a little bit irritated and just like disinterested. Like, I just didn't care anymore. I knew exactly what you were doing, and also being familiar with horror, I know the plot points and the beats when the twists and whatever gets revealed. I kind of get where the story is going, and I know where it's going to end. And basically, that's what the big issue with this film. This film becomes predictable. Now, does it mean that you have any horrible performances and any bad performances by any of the actors? Absolutely not. And anything, that's their strong suit. I felt that these characters have now owned, these actors have owned these characters into their core and actually evolved them from the first film. I think that even with newcomers that are added to this film, and especially in the setting of this winter camp, and you see basically just in terms of a new kind of ensemble for a cast, an interesting story that really impacts the setting of this film. And I think the setting of this film is also really one of the benefits of taking the grabber and putting him in a new element, but also expanding the lore, which I will say was interesting, because unlike with the first film, this one is more personal. This more personal in terms of the lore of the grabber, how he started, where he came from, and how closely he connected to Gwen and Finney and their family. And without spoilers, you get more revelations as the film goes on. But also, you see more explore themes in terms of the escapism and people suppressing their trauma. When you go to Jeremy Davies' character, who plays Terrence, who's the father of Gwen and Finney, right, who has a drinking problem, and you're seeing how he's coping with stuff. But then you're also seeing, now that these characters are older, Finney, he's dabbling in some substances that is causing him to cope with his trauma. And I think that they did a very good job of how realistic that aspect of a person is when they've gone through childhood trauma. They're going to find some ways of escapism, whether it be drinking, doing drugs, whatever, and being very aggressive, being angry, and acting in violence. And I think they did a good job in this. And I think Mason gave a fantastic performance, especially he's been having a great year coming from How You Train Your Dragon to now this and everything. He's just been killing it, and I've been really excited to see him, grow and mature as an actor. And I definitely feel he's evolved. But Madeleine, I will say this was her movie. Gwen, even though she was a pivotal point in the last film, this is mainly her film because it's centered around her and the evolution of her abilities and everything to sense the future and sense, the death of these children and everything. And I felt they gave a really good job in terms of just expanding on her lore, but also with spoilers that are going to be revealed when you watch this film about how closely connected the grabber is to her and to her family. This is a lot more personal, and I think she gave really good performances in terms of how intense scenes were mainly just for her and Ethan Hawke, and how dramatic it is, how terrifying these situations is, especially when this is affecting when she's asleep, and when she's also going through these visions. She's also questioning what is real and what is not, right? And everyone responding to her, but mainly coming from Mason, who wanted to protect his sister, right, by any means necessary, right? And I felt they really give a good job in terms of that. But let's talk about Ethan Hawke. Ethan Hawke, again, he is a talented actor, again, since, for many, many years and stuff. And with his performance as the grabber, he definitely delivers to give off that menacing presence and lingering obsession. And I really wanted them with the first film, where you've seen a lot of people breaking down how the first one kind of go themes about religion and about the weight of sins and the burden of sins and everything. I felt they could have explored that a little bit more, but and they kind of do in the context of the setting of this film and this camp. And you'll see when you see it is that how this character uses trauma, uses the weight of sins and burdens against his own victims, but particularly how he go through this mental gymnastics with both Finney and Gwen. And now that we're seeing him in this new setting, involved in him being this more supernatural element, and which is translating to be more of a physical threat at this point, but he's more powerful, he's more reckless in this film. And I think they did a really good job in terms of making this a more iconic villain. However, I hope that if this film does get another film, Black Phone 3, and if you watch this film, you probably might want a Black Phone 3, just in terms of the way it ends and how it kind of left some loose ends to be explored. They really need to give a crucial story to the grabber, and I want him to be an original villain, not some ripoff of Freddy Krueger. And I think that's my biggest issue with this, is that the first film was very original. Even though, yeah, there's some similarities in terms of horror film tropes and stuff, but that villain, the grabber, was original. Now, because now he is in the afterlife and now he's dead in the physical realm, it's transitioned into Freddy Krueger, but in a new skin, with a new Fortnite skin or something like that, right? And literally, in terms of, if you are, I keep doing this comparison to Freddy Krueger, but if you've seen Freddy Krueger films, Friday the 13th films, there are certain lines that are said verbatim that you cannot miss if you are a horror film fanatic, that you would get when one person says a particular line, like, "Oh, I saw that in Friday the 13th." And yeah, it's hilarious. But there also a lot of comedic elements into this film too. But I think it was paced well, where it wasn't coming across as comedic. Just it was just situational humor, especially with other supporting characters centered around this winter camp, that Finney, Gwen, and another particular friend or love interest that she brought along with them is interacting. And I think that they do a really good job in terms of explaining the themes about religion and people who are Christians and who want to combat evil, and people who are more religious and prideful, and therefore want to just hide around a corner instead of combating and facing evil, and being so-called Christians that they call themselves to be, right? So they're challenging that, themes of religion there, which they did in the first film. But I like the returns of what they did here. Again, setting up the horror film season as we're going closer to Halloween. Again, if you're a horror film fan, I think you're gonna have a good time watching this movie. However, for someone that is familiar with horror films, I felt that this film definitely was predictable. Sometimes it was frustrating, and just in terms of the certain tropes that they were hitting over and over again throughout the film. But I do believe that in terms of performance wise, all these actors deliver to the best of their ability, and it's a sight to see, I will say. So make sure you go see Black Phone 2, which is in theaters right now by the time of this recording. And make sure you subscribe, button, comment, like, and share. Let me know your thoughts if you've seen Black Phone 2, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.